She was half pinned against the log, dress torn with dust, breath breaking apart, while a man twice her age closed in and told her not to move. Her hands were shaking so bad she couldn't hold the fabric together. Knees drawn tight, eyes wide with panic, staring at a stranger who looked strong enough to hurt her, if he chose to. The sun burned straight down, no shade but a dead cottonwood, and nobody else was around to hear her scream if she tried. He crouched behind her, close enough that she could smell sweat, leather, and old tobacco, and his voice came low and flat like this wasn't new to him. In the sunlight, a thorn the size of a finger was buried in her thigh, and every breath made it bite deeper. "Hold still," he said, one hand already reaching, the other steady as stone. Her back arched away on instinct, pain shooting up her leg, fear flooding faster than blood ever could. "It hurts," she gasped, breath tearing loose. "This is my first time." For half a second, he froze, not because he didn't understand the words, but because he understood them too well. He swallowed once, eyes narrowing, jaw tightening, and for a heartbeat it looked like the worst thing she feared might actually happen. Then he said it, calm and cold, like a man who'd learned how to end suffering without ceremony. "It'll be over quick." From a distance, it would have looked wrong. A young woman pinned in the dirt, an older rancher looming behind her. No witnesses, no law. That's the kind of moment people judge before they understand, and sometimes before they bother to kick. But if she moved even an inch more, the thorn buried deep in her thigh would tear muscle, fester in the heat, and maybe kill her slow. And Caleb McRae knew that, because he'd watched stronger men die from less, back when the sun and bad luck were enough to put you in the ground. Clara Whitmore didn't know his name then, didn't know he was 49, didn't know he'd buried more friends than most towns had graves. All she knew was the pain, the shame of being held still by a stranger, and the terror of not knowing what came next. She clenched her teeth, fingers digging into her skirt, voice breaking again. "I've never had anyone pull something this deep out of me," she whispered, forcing the words out before fear could turn them into something uglier. Caleb nodded once, not looking at her face, not letting himself soften. "Don't look back," he said. "Count your breaths." He used a piece of clean cloth, water from his canteen, and a small pair of iron tweezers worn smooth from years of honest work. When he pulled, she cried out, sharp and raw, and the sound cut through the open prairie like a gunshot. Then it was done. Blood welled, pain eased into a dull throb, and the worst part passed exactly as he promised. She sagged forward, shaking, still alive. Caleb wrapped the wound without comment. Hands steady, movements respectful, never once taking what wasn't given. He looked up. That's when he saw a thin brown line on the horizon, moving fast, wrong for cattle, wrong for wind. Riders, and the way Clara's fingers locked around the old Bible in her lap told him everything she wasn't saying. Before we go any further, let me be clear with you. This story has been gathered from old frontier records, retold accounts, and weathered memories, then carefully rewritten with a few added details to carry stronger lessons, deeper meaning, and better storytelling. All images you see are created by AI, used only to help you feel the heat, the fear, and the weight of those moments long gone. If this kind of story isn't for you tonight, it's all right to step away, get some rest, and take care of yourself. But if it holds you, if it makes you lean a little closer like you're sitting beside an old fire, then leave a comment so I know. And I'll keep bringing you stories worth staying up for. There's one more thing you should know before we move on. If those riders caught her right there, nobody would have called it a kidnapping. They would have called it a recovery. That's how men like Silas Crow win. They don't need the truth. They just need a story that sounds official. Clara knew it too. That's why her fingers were locked on that Bible like it was the last door left open in a burning house. And Caleb, he wasn't staring at the horizon because he liked drama. He was counting how long it would take a horse in this heat to cross that open stretch. And he was counting how many mistakes he could afford. Because once you get outnumbered on flat ground, you don't get saved by bravery. You get saved by timing. And Caleb McRae had learned to respect timing the hard way. Caleb helped her to her feet, slow and careful, keeping his body between her and the open land. "You can walk," he said, "but not far." She nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you," she whispered. Then, after a pause, "They're looking for me." Caleb didn't ask who, didn't ask why. He just watched the riders' line thicken on the horizon, the sun slide lower, and felt an old weight settle back onto his shoulders. Because whatever Clara Whitmore was carrying in that Bible, men were riding hard through summer heat to get it. And if they caught her, the pain she felt today would be nothing compared to what came next. So here's the question you need to sit with before this story goes any further. When the law belongs to the highest bidder and mercy puts a target on your back, would you risk everything to protect a girl you just met? Or would you step aside and let the desert decide her fate? Caleb didn't wait to see how many riders there were. He'd learned a long time ago that if you pause too long, the land decides for you. And the land doesn't care who's right. He took Clara's arm, not rough, just firm enough to keep her moving, and guided her away from the dead cottonwood toward a low fold in the ground that dipped it down toward the river. "Easy now," he said, not loud, not soft, short steps. "Don't rush it." Her leg still burned, but the pain had changed. It wasn't sharp anymore. It was the kind that reminded you were still alive, and that mattered. They moved with the sun at their backs, dust sticking to sweat, flies circling like they always did in Kansas heat. Clara stumbled once, and Caleb steadied her without comment, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. That steadiness was what calmed her most. Not kindness, not words, just the sense that this man had walked through worse and come out breathing. They reached a shallow break near the Arkansas River, where cottonwood shade thinned the heat. Caleb stopped her there and checked the bandage again. "Still holding," he said. "Hurts means it's working." She managed a small nod, then looked back the way they'd come. The dust line was thicker now. "They won't stop," she said, more to herself than to him. Caleb followed her gaze. "No," he said, "they won't." He led her to his ranch cabin, nothing more than a squat wooden place with a lean-to and a corral that had seen better days. It wasn't much, but it was quiet, and it wasn't on the main trail. Inside, the air smelled like dry wood, coffee grounds, and a life lived alone. Caleb handed her water, then set about cleaning his tools like this was just another afternoon. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, Bible tight in her hands, eyes tracking every sound outside. "You can rest," he said. "They won't ride straight in here. Not yet." Clara tried to sit still, but her hands wouldn't listen. She kept wiping her palms on her skirt like she could wipe fear off the same way. Caleb saw it and slid a tin cup toward her without looking up. It wasn't kindness dressed up fancy. It was just a man offering water because he understood what shaking meant. Outside, the afternoon insects sang like they didn't care who lived or died. Inside, the cabin felt smaller every minute, like the walls were leaning in to hear her secrets. Clara stared at the Bible, then at Caleb, not because she trusted him yet, but because she didn't have anyone else left to mistrust. Caleb kept his eyes on his hands, cleaning and wiping and setting things in place. Men who've carried a badge, even once, they learn a habit. They make order when they can, because they know chaos always shows up uninvited. Clara took a slow breath. She didn't want to tell him the whole truth. The whole truth got her father hurt. The whole truth got her hunted, but half-truths were how people died on the prairie. So she decided to give him one thing that mattered. Not names, not money, just the reason a man would ride through summer heat to take a Bible from a young woman. She stared at the Bible a long moment, then spoke so quietly he almost missed it. "I didn't fall off my horse," she said. Caleb didn't look up. "I figured," he said. That was it. No judgment, no questions stacked on top of pain. She took a breath. "My father was a surveyor," she said. "He found something men don't like to share. He didn't send me alone by choice," she said. "The wagon was hit at a crossing, and the men who were with us were either scattered or dead. He pushed this Bible into my hands and told me to ride until my lungs burned." Caleb rinsed the cloth, wrung it out slow. "Water," he said. She nodded. "A source near the Cimarron," she said. "Strong enough to keep cattle alive through summer." That made Caleb finally pause. Everyone west of Dodge City knew what water meant. In a dry season, it meant power. It meant survival. It meant blood if the wrong man wanted it bad enough. He hid the papers in the Bible, she said, lifting it just a little. He told me not to trust anyone with a badge, and he told me if I stopped to ask permission, I'd be buried before sundown. That last part sat heavy in the room. Caleb set the cloth aside and leaned against the table. You did right coming off the trail, he said, and wrong trusting the open land. She gave a tired half smile. I didn't have many choices. None of us ever do, he said. Later that afternoon, hoofbeats stopped just short of the corral. 3 men rode in slow, hats low, eyes sharp. The one in front smiled like he was visiting family. Afternoon, he called. Name's Silas Crow. We're looking for a young lady. Caleb stepped out onto the porch, body relaxed, hands empty. No young ladies here, he said. Silas smiled wider. Shame, he said. She's been reported missing. He held up a paper, edges crisp, ink fresh. Caleb didn't step closer. Paper's clean, Caleb said, but the story isn't. Silas's eyes flicked past him, just once, toward the door. That's not your trouble, Silas said. Hand her over and this stays a quiet place. Caleb shook his head. Not today. Silas studied him for a long second, then tipped his hat. Heat makes men stubborn, he said. We'll give you time to cool off. They rode away slow, like men who knew they'd be back. When the dust settled, Clara came to the doorway. They're going to burn this place, she said. Caleb didn't argue. Maybe, he said. That gives us a little time. As the sun dropped, he packed light, food, water, ammunition. He didn't touch the Bible. That stays with you, he said. For now. She watched him work. You could still walk away, she said. No one would blame you. Caleb smiled. Just barely. I already walked away once, he said. It didn't sit right. Outside, the land went quiet, and that way it does before trouble. If you're still with me, now's a good moment to settle in. If these stories matter to you, take a second to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. Pour yourself a cup of tea or coffee, get comfortable, and tell me in the comments what time it is where you're listening from and where you're hearing this story tonight. Because once they leave this cabin, there's no turning back. And the next choice Caleb McRae makes is going to decide whether Clara Whitmore keeps her future or loses everything before the sun rises again. They left the cabin before dawn, when the air still held a trace of mercy and the land hadn't decided what kind of day it wanted to be yet. Caleb took them east first, not because it was the right direction, but because it was the wrong one. He'd learned early that most men chase straight lines and simple answers. Clara rode quiet behind him, wrapped in a borrowed coat that smelled like dust and old soap. Every movement still reminded her of the thorn, but the pain stayed manageable. It was the kind of hurt you could live with if you had to. They kept it to shallow draws and low ground, moving where the grass bent instead of broke. Caleb checked their back trail twice, once with his eyes and once with his gut. You're doing fine, he said without turning. Just don't fight the horse. I'm not, she said. I'm fighting the day. That earned a short breath from him that might have been a laugh once, years ago. They rode another mile in silence, and Caleb lifted a hand for her to slow. He slid off his horse and walked to a patch of dirt where the grass had been pressed flat. Clara watched him kneel, touch the ground, then pinch a little dust between his fingers. He rubbed it slow, felt the dampness still clinging. He didn't need a speech to say what he found. His shoulders tightened, and that was enough. They passed here, Claire said. Caleb nodded. Fresh, he said. Not many words, but his tone told her the rest. Silas wasn't guessing. Silas was reading them like a book. Claire swallowed. I'm slowing you down, she said. Caleb looked back at her, and for the first time his face softened, just a hair. No, he said. You're reminding me why I shouldn't waste time. Then he did something that made her stomach drop. He turned them toward the main road for a short stretch, out in the open where anybody could see them. Clara's voice went thin. That's where they'll spot us. Caleb nodded again. That's the point, he said. And that was when she realized he wasn't just running. He was setting a trap of his own. By mid-morning, the heat settled in proper, the kind that crawled under your shirt and stayed there. They turned north and then west, letting the land roll them toward Dodge City. Clara finally spoke again when the town came into view. "I thought we were running," she said. "We are," Caleb said. "Sometimes that means running straight into people." Dodge City looked the same as it always had. Dust, wood, noise pretending to be life. Wagons creaked, horses stamped. Men leaned where they shouldn't and watched things that weren't their business. Caleb brought them in slow, like they belonged. He tied the horses near a general store and helped Clara down, careful of her leg. She hated that she needed it. He hated that he noticed. Inside the store, the air was thick with flour dust and sweat. Caleb bought bandage cloth, coffee, and a small tin of salve. He paid cash, no names. Clara stood near the counter, Bible pressed to her side, eyes low. She felt the looks before she saw them. "You all right, miss?" someone said. She didn't answer. They stepped back outside, and the sound of a piano spilled out from a saloon across the street. Laughter followed it, thin and sharp. "That place sells trouble," Caleb said, "but sometimes it tells you what you need to know." They didn't make it 3 steps before a hand caught Clara's arm. "Careful there," a voice said. "Town's full of thieves these days." Caleb moved without thinking. Not fast, not loud. Just enough. The man's grip broke, and the air shifted. "You let go," Caleb said. The man laughed, but his eyes didn't. "What are you going to do?" he said. "Run crying to the sheriff?" Caleb leaned in just enough for the man to smell him. "Last chance," he said. The shove came quick and wrong. The fight ended quicker. Caleb used the man's weight against him, put him into a post hard enough to knock the breath loose, then stepped back. No show, no victory dance. He wasn't young. He was pushing 50, but his hands knew rope and iron better than most men knew their own temper. Few people clapped. Most didn't. Clara stood frozen, heart racing. "Let's go," Caleb said. They didn't see Silas until it was too late. He stood across the street, hat tipped back, watching like he'd been there all morning. "Well," Silas said, "that answers that." Caleb stopped. "So does this," Caleb said. Silas smiled. "You always were good at choosing the hard road," he said. That was the first time Clara realized they knew each other. Silas stepped closer, voice low. "You should have stayed gone," he said. "I tried," Caleb said. Silas's smile faded. "This girl's carrying something that doesn't belong to her," Silas said. "You hand her over, and Dodge City stays friendly." Caleb shook his head. "She stays," he said. "We go." Silas's eyes flicked to Clara. "You hear that?" he said. "He's betting your life on pride." Clara met his stare. "He's betting it on decency," she said. Silas laughed. "That's not legal tender," he said. He stepped back and raised his voice. "Sheriff," he called, "we've got a problem." The sheriff came slow, like a man who already knew which way he was leaning. Papers changed hands, words got softer, eyes stopped meeting. Caleb watched it all and felt the old truth settle in. The law didn't disappear. It just learned new owners. They left town under stares and silence, riding hard now, no pretense left. By sunset, they reached open land again. Caleb didn't slow until the light broke apart behind them. They camped near a shallow bend, far enough from the road to stay unseen. Clara ate little, then sat staring at the Bible. "He's not wrong," she said finally. "They'll keep coming." Caleb nodded. "That's why we stopped running," he said. She looked up. "Where?" she asked. Caleb looked toward the dark line of land far south. "Cimarron," he said. "That's where this ends, huh?" The night closed in around them, quiet and heavy, and somewhere between Dodge City and that dark river, men were already riding to cut them off. The question now wasn't if they would be caught. It was who would be standing when it happened. They broke camp before first light, not because they were rested, but because the night had turned uneasy. Caleb felt it in the way the horses shifted, and in the way the dark stayed too quiet. He packed without speaking, movements practiced, mind already a few miles ahead. Clara watched him work. holding the Bible close, fingers resting over the worn leather like it might breathe back at her if she asked. "You ever notice," she said softly, "how mornings feel heavier when you know someone's behind you?" Caleb nodded once. "That's because they are," he said. They rode south with the sun climbing slow, heat already pressing down like a hand that didn't mean well. The land opened wide, no town, no fences for long stretches, just grass, dirt, and the truth of distance. Caleb kept them off the main trail, cutting across shallow gullies and dry creek beds. Every so often he'd stop, dismount, and study the ground. Clara learned not to ask. She learned that silence could be useful. By midday, they reached a narrow crossing where the land pinched tight between scrub and rock. Caleb slowed. "This is where they'll try to talk again," he said. As if summoned, riders appeared on the ridge. Silas came down first, easy in the saddle, hands open. 2 others followed, not close, not far. Caleb stepped forward, keeping Clara behind him. Silas smiled like a man who believed smiles still worked. "You don't learn," Silas said. "Or maybe you just don't care." Caleb didn't answer. Silas held up a folded paper. "County warrant," he said. "Signed proper. Stolen land document. She comes with us." Caleb didn't blink. "See that seal?" he said. "That's Belding's money talking, not the county. A clean-looking paper can still be a dirty thing." Clara leaned forward just enough to see the seal. It looked right. Too right. Caleb studied it a moment, then shook his head. "That clerk's been in the ground for months," he said. "You're late fixing your lie." Silas's smile twitched. "You've got a sharp memory," he said. "Shame you don't trust the law anymore." Caleb looked at Clara, then back at Silas. "I trust what's right," he said. "Those two don't always shake hands." Silas's voice hardened. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. That's what men say right before they do something ugly," Caleb said. Silas nodded to his riders. They didn't draw. Not yet. "This is your last clean chance," Silas said. "Hand her over. Walk away breathing." Clara stepped forward. "My father found that water fair," she said. "He surveyed it clean. You know that." Silas looked at her like she was a child arguing with weather. "Water belongs to whoever can keep it," he said. "That's how this country works." Caleb took a breath. "Right off," he said, "or we end this wrong." Silas laughed, sharp and short. "We're ending it either way," he said. The riders pulled back, not attacking, just enough to remind them what was coming. When they were gone, Clara's hands were shaking. "That paper," she said. "It looked real. That's the point," Caleb said. "Truth doesn't need to look right. Lies do." They rode on, faster now. By late afternoon, smoke rose ahead. Caleb smelled it before he saw it. They broke into a gallop. The ranch came into view, and the sight hit Clara like a fist. The corral gate was down. The feed shed burned low and angry. Blackened boards cracked in the heat. "They came back," she said. Caleb dismounted before the horse stopped. He moved through the damage without a sound. No shouting, no panic, just checking what was lost and what still stood. They didn't take much. He said, "They wanted a message." Clara stared at the burned wood. "Did it work?" she asked. Caleb met her eyes. "Yeah," he said. "It did." They didn't stay. Caleb gathered what little remained, then led her away as the sun dipped low. Smoke followed them like a memory. They rode into the night, pushing until the horses needed rest. They stopped near a low stand of trees, far enough from everything to breathe. Caleb built a small fire, shielded and low. Clara finally opened the Bible. She showed him the papers, the map, the careful marks her father had made. He wrote in code, she said, "Distances, landmarks." "It's not obvious unless you know how he thought." Caleb studied it. He was careful. He said, "He knew what kind of men were out here." Clara swallowed. "He told me to run if anything happened." She said, "I didn't think it would happen so fast." Caleb poked the fire. "It always does," he said. The quiet stretched. "Why are you really helping me?" she asked. Caleb took his time. "Because once," he said, "I trusted the badge instead of my gut." Someone paid for it. I don't plan on doing that again. She nodded, not pushing. They slept in turns. Near dawn, Clara woke to Caleb crouched low, listening. "What is it?" she whispered. He didn't answer right away. Then he said it. "They're not chasing us anymore." Her heart dropped. "That's worse," she said. Caleb nodded. "They're cutting us off." He looked south, toward the dark stretch where the Cimarron waited. "If we're going to finish this," he said, "we do it on our terms." Because somewhere ahead, the trap was already set. They moved before sunrise, not fast, not slow, just steady enough to look like they belonged to the land. Caleb led them along a dry wash that bent the south toward the Cimarron. The ground here told stories if you knew how to read it. Broken grass meant riders. Pressed dirt meant weight. Silence meant someone was being careful. "They're ahead of us," Claire said after a while. Caleb nodded. "Yeah," he said, "and they want us tired when we meet them." The day climbed quick. Heat settled heavy and personal, the kind that made water taste thin and thoughts feel thick. Claire's leg held, but every mile reminded her it wasn't healed, just behaving. They stopped near noon where a cluster of scrub gave a little shade. Caleb let the horses drink sparingly, then studied the map again. "This bend here," he said, tracing a finger. "Your father marked it twice. That's where the water is," Clara said. He said it runs deeper there, even in bad summers. Caleb nodded. "That's where they'll be waiting." They didn't argue it. Some truths didn't need discussion. By mid-afternoon, they saw them. A line of riders stretched across the low ground near the river bend, not hiding, not rushing, just there. And they weren't just Silas's men. There were others, local ranch hands, hired guns, a couple with armbands marking them as a cattle association posse. Claire's stomach dropped. "They look legal," she said. "That's the idea," Caleb said. "Doesn't make them right." They slowed and rode straight in. Silas stepped forward, relaxed, almost friendly. "Afternoon," he said. "Figured we'd save everyone the trouble." Caleb dismounted. Clara followed, slower. Silas gestured to the men behind him. "Posse's got authority," he said. "Paperwork's clean this time." Clara looked at the armbands, the badges pinned crooked. The eyes that wouldn't meet hers. "This isn't justice," she said. "This is theft." Silas shrugged. "Justice costs money," he said. "Water costs more." Caleb stepped closer. "You're not taking her," he said. "And you're not taking what's in that Bible." Silas's smile thinned. "You always did have a problem letting go," he said. "Even back when a badge told you what to do, that hit." Clara looked at Caleb, seen something shift behind his eyes. "I left that badge because it made me stupid," Caleb said. "I'm not wearing it again." Silas's voice dropped. "You put your gun down," he said. "Walk away." "I don't want to kill you." Caleb almost smiled. "That's a first," he said. The standoff broke fast, not with gunfire, but with motion. One of the posse riders lunged for Clara, thinking quick hands would end it. Caleb moved faster. He knocked the man off balance, hard, and the line shattered. What followed wasn't clean or heroic. It was dust and shouts and men tripping over each other's plans. Caleb took a blow to the shoulder that would bruise deep. He returned it with weight, not rage. Clara ducked low, heart pounding, Bible tight to her chest. She saw Silas moving wide, circling. A rider grabbed her arm. "No," she said, sharp. She twisted, kicked, and the man stumbled. She ran for the horses. Silas intercepted her. He caught her wrist. Not rough, not gentle. "You don't want this," he said. She looked him in the eye. "I already have it," she said. Behind them, Caleb saw it happen. He raised his gun. Silas turned. "Using Clara as cover." "Easy," Silas said. "You won't shoot." Caleb's hand shook once, then steadied. He lowered the gun. Silas blinked. "That's right," Silas said. "You're not that man." Caleb stepped forward instead. Silas pushed Clara away and swung. The fight between them was ugly and personal. No crowd, no cheering, just two men with history and too much heat. Silas was quicker. Caleb was heavier. They traded blows until breath ran short. Silas landed a hard one to Caleb's ribs and laughed. Still think you're better than pinning me, he said. Caleb wiped blood from his mouth. I think I'm done, he said. He surged forward, drove Silas back into the dirt, pinned him long enough to twist his arm and send the gun flying. For a moment, it was over. The posse hesitated. Some backed away. Others looked uncertain. Then a shot rang out. One man yelped and dropped to a knee, more fear than blood, and the whole line flinched. That was enough to remind everyone how fast this could turn permanent. Not from Caleb, not from Silas. One of the posse riders fired wild, panic more than intent. The bullet hit dirt, close enough to remind everyone how thin the line was. Caleb stood, breathing hard. That's enough, he said. This ends now. A woman stepped forward from the edge of the group. She was older, dressed plain, the kind of face that had buried a husband and still got up to feed the chickens. I run a rooming house outside Meade, she said, voice steady. Your man Silas came to my table last month and offered me $200 to burn a ledger. She held up the papers, edges worn, ink faded where a thumb had worried it. He said if I talked, I'd be found in a ditch. I kept it anyway. One of the ranch hands shifted, younger than the rest, sunburned and tired. I got kids downstream, he said. If you dam that water for one big outfit, my family starves. Another man nodded, slower. In mine, he said. Silas snapped, losing the calm he'd been wearing like a coat. Shut up, he barked. That water belongs to Belding, and you boys belong to me if you want work. The armbands didn't look so official after that. The armbands suddenly felt heavy on their sleeves, one by one. They looked at Silas, then at the ground. The truth spread faster than fear. Men looked at their badges, at Silas, at each other. Silas cursed, tried to rise. Caleb pressed him back down. It's done, Caleb said. Not your way. The posse broke apart, authority draining with every step backward. Silas was left in the dirt, breathing hard, eyes burning. You think this wins you something? He said. Caleb stood over him. It wins her a chance, he said. That's enough. As the sun dipped low, the land seemed to exhale. Clara stood by the river bend, staring at the water her father died for. Caleb joined her, quiet. You ready for the last part? He asked. She nodded. Are you? She asked back. Caleb looked toward the town, the law, and the road back. Not sure, he said, but I won't step away. Behind them. Silas laughed once, low and bitter. This isn't over, he said, and Caleb knew he was right, because the man who owned the water had not shown his face yet. And when men like that finally speak, they usually do it through the law, but for today, the river still ran free. The river ran quiet after the men scattered like it had been waiting its turn to speak. Clara stood at the edge of the Cimarron, boots wet, watching the water slide past stones her father once touched with care. It was real now, not a drawing, not a promise, something alive that could keep families breathing through bad summers. Caleb stayed a few steps back and giving her space. He knew better than to crowd a moment like that. Silas was tied and waiting under guard from two men who still remembered what right felt like. He wasn't beaten into silence. He was simply finished being believed. The cattle baron never showed his face. Men like that rarely do when daylight turns honest. His power slipped away quietly through ledgers and witnesses, and people who finally spoke up when they realized they were not alone. By nightfall, word had already started moving faster than horses. Clara sat by the fire later, Bible open in her lap. Papers laid flat and safe at last. She looked lighter somehow, not because the danger was gone, but because she had faced it and stayed standing. Caleb handed her a cup of coffee, weak and hot. You did right, he said. She looked up at him. I was scared the whole time, she said. He nodded. So was I, he said. That's how you know it mattered. They didn't talk about what came next right away. Sometimes the future needs a little quiet before it answers. They rode back toward town the next day, not together, not apart, just close enough to know they were choosing the same direction. The sheriff listened this time. Not because he'd grown a conscience overnight, but because truth has weight when enough people carry it in together. And a man in a clean vest stood behind him, holding a folder like it was a gun. Belding still wasn't there, but his paperwork was. Clara signed the papers herself. The water rights stayed where her father intended. Shared, fair. Watched. Caleb turned in nothing. No badge, no claim. Just a man who had finished a job he once thought he'd failed at forever. At the edge of town. He stopped. "This is where I head west," he said. "Quiet suits me better." Clara nodded, then hesitated. "My place will need fixing," she said, "and someone who knows the land." Caleb smiled, small and honest. "I know a thing or two," he said, "and I'm not in much of a hurry." They didn't promise forever. They didn't need to. Some bonds aren't loud. They just last. Now let me step out of the dust for a moment and speak to you directly. What stayed with me about this story isn't the fight or the chase or even the danger. It's the way two people chose decency when it would have been easier to step aside. I've lived long enough to learn this. Most of the damage in our lives doesn't come from bad people. It comes from good people who decide it is not their problem. Caleb could have walked away a dozen times. Clara could have handed over the Bible and lived smaller but safer. Neither did. That choice matters, and it applies now just as much as it did back then. How many times have you known something was wrong but told yourself it was not your place? How many times have you let fear dress itself up as caution? This story reminds us that courage is rarely loud. Most of the time it sounds like a tired voice saying, "Not today." Another thing worth holding on to is this. Pain does not mean failure. Clara said it hurts and meant more than the wound. She meant the fear of stepping into something unknown for the first time. We all have moments like that. New work, new loss, new responsibility, new truth. If you wait until it does not hurt, you will wait forever. Growth always stings a little, and age is not a weakness here. Caleb was not fast. He was not shiny. He was not trying to prove anything. What he had was restraint, judgment, the ability to stop before becoming what he hated. For those of us listening who have lived a few decades, that lesson matters. Strength is not in reaction. It is in choosing when not to act. So let me ask you a few questions to sit with. What are you holding that someone once trusted you to protect? Where have you been running when standing still might change everything? And if the law or the crowd or the loudest voice is wrong, would you have the nerve to be quiet and right? Stories like this remind us that a better life is not built in big moments. It is built in small choices, repeated until they become who we are. If this story gave you something to think about, something to feel, I would appreciate it if you took a second to like this video. It helps these stories find the people who need them. And if you want more stories that slow things down and remind us what matters, subscribe to the channel. I will keep gathering them and telling them the way they deserve to be told. Before you go, let me ask you one last thing. Where are you listening from right now? What time is it where you are? And what part of this story stayed with you the longest? Leave a comment and tell me. I read them more than you might think. Until next time, take care of yourself. Choose decency when it costs something, and remember this. Some hurts pass quick. Some take a lifetime, but the choice to do right is always worth the pain.